Hello, this is the Torg Eternity Delphi Council Debriefings, where the storm has a name. We are your hosts, Leamon, Jay, and Mark. And today we will be taking a short break. We will be back, but we will take a short break from Fires of Ra Deep Dive to do a episode that actually we can have for both players and game masters. So we are going to go through some cyberware and get into the nitty gritty on how different cyberware options work and etc. Not necessarily the perks, but just the cyberware implants themselves. We do also can email us at torgdcd@gmail.com and send us your questions, comments, etc. And we will read those in a future episode. So let's go ahead and dive in. We'll start with sensory implants, and we can start with the Bell Scan. So the Bell Scan implant enhances the detection of motion, especially at a distance. The device allows a user to ignore 2 points of speed penalties when firing weapons at fast-moving targets. So Jay, what are your thoughts on the Bell Scan?
I think this is going to be a recurring theme for my opinions, especially for the sensory implants, is that a lot of these are extremely specific, right? And so the question is, like, how much utility are you going to be getting out of this normally? So normally generally speaking, you're only really dealing with speed penalties if you're in like a chase or something like that. It's not a normal function like in most combats. So unless you're some kind of like racer, cyberlegger, like I don't know, like punk on a bike or something, like it's probably not going to come up too often now. Looking at it, you can have, it's when firing weapons at fast-moving targets, so it still also doesn't even necessarily apply to melee attacks. It depends on how your GM's going to interpret that. So it is $1,000, or I guess, we should use the cash, because you
Right.
get your 10 or your 8 or 5 grand to spend on this kind of stuff. So do you want to use 10% of your allotment for a very niche like ignore a penalty of 2? I would probably rather just get a bonus of, I don't know, say +4, but we'll get to that.
So Mark, your thoughts on Bell Scan?
I tend to look at these because, as Jay pointed out, they are very niche if you take them just from the crunch side of the equation. And there's not a lot of, why would I ever do that? Okay, well, I'm building this pilot, or jack of all trades. You can operate any vehicle of any kind. Well, would I want to have this? Well, okay, I got 1,000 to spend. Yeah, okay, I'll pick that up. And it's kind of an afterthought after you've bought all the big stuff. I kind of like to look at the fluff text a little bit, and when you can, give your players the opportunity to use them in a way that is a little bit outside the box. You got to be careful, though, because that can become a precedent, and then you've kind of expanded things beyond the unintended consequences. But in this case, Bell Snipe allows the shooter to use, Bell Scan, this implant enhances the detection of motion. So, if you just take that one little fragment of the sentence and say this helps with motion, well, now you've got a motion detector you can use to a degree that you can expand to something like, if you've got that, the motion detector from the Aliens movie where they're trying to track things coming at them or moving away. This does say especially at distance, but it allows the user to ignore 2 points of speed penalties when firing a weapon at a fast-moving target. When Jay brought up, depends on how your game master interprets that with melee weapons, I might broaden that a little bit to say, well, they're moving very quickly. Someone ran and you took the penalty or whatever. Maybe that mitigates that, or something along those lines. But again, I don't think that was the original intent of this particular piece of cyberware. So if you open it up to something like that and you become a little more flexible with the interpretation, you have to know your Storm Knights and see where, are they going to take that and kind of try and twist it into places that you didn't intend for it to be when you were just trying to be nice to them on that one occasion. So I don't know. That's up to you. It is very niche, and it's kind of a neat idea, but how often are you going to use that grand?
Yeah, that's kind of my thought on the Bell Scan. I could see it being a little more potent, but still niche, even if you allowed it to work with melee weapons or just being able to detect and understand fast-moving targets. If, say, I could see this being, if a game master wanted to expand it even a little bit further, that in chases and stuff, if you are the pilot or the driver or whatever, that you could ignore 2 points of speed penalties when crashing into somebody or avoiding a crash or something like that. I do kind of like your idea, Mark, of just a detection of motion. Just maybe somebody failed something, and a normal find, and you're like, hey, try that again, or hey, just in this case, you can roll and lower their difficulty number by 2 or something like that, because otherwise, for me and my not liking chases, I personally would very much suggest to any of my players that they look for something else that is 1,000 to spend this on, because I would agree, even if you have a lot of chases and stuff, this will be the I've spent 9,000 or 8,000 and I'm trying to find other things just to buy, and I don't want to save it up, or I've just got everything that I ever am going to want and I have an extra 1,000 laying around then to do it. But otherwise it is very specific. If you had a game where you were just like, we're going to be doing lots of things like the Electric Samurai and Pan Pacific on their motorcycles, and Tharkol Junkers, doing Mad Max stuff, and you're, in the Nile Empire, you love those, chases in the 1930s cars and stuff, and then, in Pan or in Cyber Papacy, rushing down the street in
your Peugeot,
in your little hover cars and stuff like that. If that's the kind of game you're playing, this could have much greater use, but that's not the typical game. So let's move on to Bell Snipe. The Bell Snipe allows the shooter to use the aim combat option to fire a weapon with the smart gun attachment as a simple action instead of sacrificing a turn, but only if the character shoots at a single target with a single shot. So, Jay, your thoughts on Bell Snipe?
Bell Snipe is very good, if not overpowered. But before I go on about Bell Snipe, I just wanted to actually, just in general, because I think this kind of came up with the Bell Scan, is that when you've got your 10 and then maybe 5 or your 8 grand to spend on cyberware, it's a very limited amount, and it's tied to your perks. So you, unlike some other games with cyberware or bionics, where you could kind of just buy it a la carte whenever you want, and there might be a humanity score or something like that to keep you from going totally crazy, this is linked to perks, and as we know, perks get more expensive as you go, so you are very limited in your options to take them. So I think a lot of times the cost is a big deal here. Like, realistically, unless you're going to buy a bunch of like really cheap ones, and that's usually more the case with gene mods than with Occultech or Cyberware, then with Occultech and Cyberware, you tend to only get like maybe 4 or 5 max, so when I was looking at this and as we were talking about it, like, to me, the Bell Scan, rules as written, really seems more like it should be like $250 to me than 1,000. I think that we kind of need I like having cyberware that has particular flavor like this. And the sensory section is filled with it. And I know a lot of it is because these are also from Classic Torg, which did have kind of a limitation as to how much you could put on, but it was, again, a very different system. So I like having these flavorful, characterful implants, but I think that with the cost right now, you can't really afford to take them. But everyone will make space for the bell snipe
They should.
it is very, very good. So normally aim is not a very often used option. So like aim, normally you have to take a full round out in combat, aim at somebody with your weapon, and then the next round when you shoot you're going to do actually no, you get a +4 to hit, right? Which losing a turn is probably one of the worst things for a player. Whether it's because in the original rules somebody got a villain got an outstanding interaction attack on you, or you're feared or whatever it is, losing an entire turn is the worst. Even if you are doing it to yourself for a bonus. Because the next turn you get your +4, you could still roll a 1 and screw it all up anyways, right? There's no guarantees. But once you start getting a few perks, if you have the sniper perk and now you're getting a +4 and plus a bonus die of damage, then it starts to become, okay, maybe it's kind of questionable. But this gets rid of the biggest problem. It gets rid of the full round action, or rather, spending a full round. It's not an action. Spending a full round to aim at someone is now a simple action. So you can simple action, fire right away. It works very well. And move, yeah. The only limitation is you can only shoot at one person. So you can't do like a big, auto fire. Although if it's a blast weapon, that's another situation.
Aim with the grenade launcher.
Yeah. The other thing is that came up in my game when I had a drone jockey is that if you're using a drone override suit on your drones, they can use your perks and cyberware bonuses. So those drones, like the assault drone, can actually also use this. I think only one of you can use it per turn was the limiting factor. But still, depending on if you're not sticking your head out, let the drone do it, right? So this one piece of cyberware adds so much, but it does make it so you can consider that someone with this will be aiming every single turn. And the limitation on targeting just one person isn't that big a limitation because they will have factored that in to their character when taking this in the first place. So for GMs, just be aware when someone has this, they're going to be doing a lot of damage. Players, it's really good, but your GM might get angry after a bit, so don't lean on it as too much of a crutch. But I would say this is probably one of the biggest, most impactful pieces of cyberware in the book, personally.
Yeah, and I'll just say the one other thing to look out for is you do need the smart gun attachment. So
yes.
If you don't have a smart gun attachment, then it doesn't work. But otherwise, Mark, what are your thoughts on the bell snipe?
Yeah, this is, if you're building a shooter and you're not taking bell snipe, then you're building a different character than I've seen, because that's pretty much what everybody does is is bell snipe and smart gun and then whatever weapon you want to put in it. I will say that as Jay mentioned, a blast weapon for this, I would absolutely not let that work. Specifically because the goal with the specifically with sniper, because the goal, you're taking a shot at one target, and the reason that it works the way that it works is that you're honing in on the one target. Now you can make the argument, well, I'm going to pick that one spot in the middle of the group as my target, and then I'm going to shoot the grenade at it or whatever. Yeah, you can make that case, but the bonus damage to the sniper is specifically because you hit someone, in the head or in a very vital spot, and you're aiming at that one target. And a grenade doesn't do that. A rocket or a bomb or a blast effect doesn't do that. It blasts out indiscriminately. So take that for what it's worth. That's my 2 cents on that, because I found that I was like, oh, I don't like that at all. No, I'm not doing that. But if you're gonna make that statement, if your GM, your Storm Knights are building out their character and they're taking Bell Snipe, make sure you have the discussion with them beforehand. Well, how do you see that working? Okay, here's how I'm going to adjudicate that. And you have the conversation so that when they take it, they know what they're walking into, instead of walking into it and going, well, I thought it did this. No, I built it all the way around this to do something specific, and that's not what you're doing. Then that way you avoid that whole conversation. But it's absolutely the ubiquitous piece of cyberware for a character who's going to be shooting, because it's just, how is it not good? Other than I'm only shooting one person, one threat. Okay, you're the one that's going to be doing a crap ton of damage to that one threat. And when you roll up into the dramatic scene on the boss, everybody's going to look at you and go, okay, here you go. This is why we brought you.
Yeah, like story time, I guess. Before Cyber Papacy book came out with Bell Snipe, a lot of my players had looked at getting like the sniper perk and just requiring the full round of sacrificing your turn, which also means no simple actions, no normal action, no movement. There was a lot of hesitation to use the aim action and get the sniper, even with the sniper bonus of a BD. And one of the house rules that I came up with is if somebody does aim, then they don't have to worry about the firing into melee rule. And so then my players were actually using aim so that when their melee would run into battle, they wouldn't shoot the melee, except for one guy. He didn't care. Every round he was going to shoot. He was not going to sacrifice.
There's always one.
Everybody else in both of my games, everybody except for one guy, and he was I'm going to shoot every time. I don't care. When this Bell Snipe came out, I was both happy and disappointed. I was happy that there is an option now that they could use the aim, because still you're going to have to buy a perk to get the money to buy the Bell Snipe. If you want the sniper thing, you're going to have to buy the perk for sniper. So it's not like it's cheap. It's not expensive either, but it's not just like free. But I personally would have liked a perk that would have allowed other people from other places other than Cyber Papacy, or who didn't want Cyberware, to be able to do that type of simple action thing. But I was glad to see it, and a couple of my players had their characters then take this, because if you are ranged and you want to get that bonus die from sniper, this is a no-brainer. This is the thing that makes it so that you can shoot pretty much every round that it makes sense to shoot in. And you, for 300, which is, as Jay was saying, if you're from the Cyber Papacy, that's 30%. If you're from somewhere else, that's 3,000 of your 8,000. You still got 5 left, so it's a good deal all around for what it does.
Yeah, but that's an extra BD on your weapon every time. That's worth every penny.
Yep.
I don't care how much it's worth every penny.
So let's move on to the Bellevue 2020 CyberEye. So this was updated in the Cyber Papacy source book, so if you have the regular book, it's a little bit different, possibly. It says this eye enhancement increases fine detail and can even detect pattern or breaks in patterns. Any test made to detect and comprehend visual evidence, usually find or tracking, becomes favored. So Jay, what are your thoughts on the Bellevue 2020 CyberEye?
Yeah, in the Cyber Papacy book, it includes evidence analysis as well. So actually, this is pretty good, I think. it's if you're a scout type character, it's what you're going to be doing most of the time. There's usually the one findy guy in the group, so making it favored is really good. And again, this is one that came up with the scout drone. The scout drone, depending on what mode it's in, can be favored in find and tracking. But if it's not in that mode, it normally isn't. So if you're manually operating it and looking through it, you can use your own tracking through it, and then it is favored, even if it's still in stealth mode. So that's another sort of nice little thing you can do with it there. Yeah, just a nice, in general, just a good one. I think this one is properly, $2,000. It's a good amount for it, and it's pretty useful.
Mark, your thoughts on the Bellevue 2020 Cyber Eye?
They did with this one what I think they should have done with the rest of them, in that they took the flavor text and made it actually meaningful in the mechanic. And I think that if they had done that with, like, for example, the Bell Scan, then the $1,000 price tag would make a lot more sense. Because we've got some others that we'll cover later that are very inexpensive, and you're looking at going, okay, well, yeah, okay, I wasn't there for that one, so I'll leave it alone. I like this one a lot, just because it gives you quite a bit of value, especially if you want to be the one that figures out where the clues are. And if you're going to build that cybernetic observation, I've got the eye, I've got the nose, I've got the ear, whatever, this is almost ubiquitous, especially with the favored for the evidence analysis and the find. You're the one that's going to find the clues. I mean, when you walk in the room, everybody's going to step back and just kind of wait for you to do your thing, because you're just going to scan the room, and then, oh, it's over there. You find it and figure it out. That it's a good, if that's your shtick, if that's what you built your Storm Knight to do, this is almost required.
Yeah, I had a player who built a spy, a cybercriminal spy, and she got this, and it was funny because sometimes when you get that person who is like the find person, the evidence analysis person, and they start using all of their perks and cyberware and stuff like that, it's amusing as a game master then when they roll that one and they disconnect. But then sometimes your players are like, huh, how'd that happen? Am I going to disconnect if I'm looking for something? So it was no, they're using their eye, so that's why, they have it favored, and they messed up, or find, tracking, etc. So that's kind of a cool thing. Again, I think this is one of the ones that actually is worth the 2,000, especially for those type of characters who want to be able to notice the things, track the things, figure out the things. So let's move on to the Bellevue Lowlight Mark II, which I don't think has any text, but
it's straightforward.
Yeah, it ignores 2 points of darkness penalties. So, Jay, what are your thoughts on this?
It's only 1,000, so it's pretty cheap. It's a 10th or a 5th of a perk, depending on how you look at these things. So I think this one is fairly costed, pretty straightforward. Not as good as the Tharkol, like the Occultech version, which is a entire tech level lower, but I can see why. There's like sort of thematic reasons for it. It is cheap, so yeah, I like this one. Very straightforward.
Mark, your thoughts on the Bellevue Lowlight Mark II?
This is where you put your 1,000, not in Bell Scan. I mean, because it makes a ton of sense that your cybernetic eye. It makes a ton of sense that your cybernetic eye can do this. It ought to be in every cybernetic eye, and you get that just ought to be there that a cybernetic eye reduces darkness penalties by 2. I don't care whatever other function it does, because that's the +4 is really where you want to get, and you have to get 2 items to do that. You have to get to the Bell spectrum in order to get to that level, which now you're spending $4,000 just to get to +4, which that kind of tickles my OCD because it's a 1,000 a point, but +2s are kind of ubiquitous to me, and that's where everything starts. Anyway, it's getting the +2 and or reducing darkness penalties by 2, I guess is the right way to say it. Mm-hmm. is a very, very good universal effect. That's not, this isn't going to work in some cosms. Darkness works in all cosms. So no matter where you are,
unless as long as you're not
unless it's mage dark, as long as you're not disconnected, this is going to work wherever you are. But even if you're used to it working, all of a sudden it's dark and it doesn't work, you learned something you would not have otherwise known. Mm-hmm. Wait, I'm in mage dark, or at least you should know, because as Jay just pointed out, it works in everything except here. Now you know there's a bad guy out there. The lights didn't just go out. I like it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty standard. Definitely, I would take this above Bell Scan and other 1,000. If I had that 1,000 left over, it would go towards this and not one of the other ones that we've either talked about or will talk about. So let's move on to the Bell Spectrum. This is a little bit different. The Bell Spectrum implants detects radio, infrared, and UV radiation and converts it into visual signal transmitted directly to the user's brain. The user ignores up to 4 points of darkness penalties as long as the target emits heat. Additionally, the presence of cyberware or occult tech in a being is automatically detected unless those devices have hardened shielding. So, Jay, your thoughts on the Bell Spectrum. As a reference, the low light for ignoring 2 in any except for like Mage Dark, True Dark is 1,000. This one is 3,000 for ignoring 4 points of darkness, but only if there is a target emitting heat or wearing occult tech or cyberware. So your thoughts, Jay?
So first of all, I'm not seeing anything about you requiring a Bellevue low light to take this. Like, as far as I'm aware, you just spend your $3,000 your $3,000 and you've got it, right?
Yeah, I didn't read any.
I thought I read somewhere you had to have the other one first, but I may have missed that. That would be my bad if I did.
Okay, so either way, I kind of think this one's a trap. So it's 3 times more expensive. It's twice as good, but it gives you twice the benefit with a bit of a limitation. It only works on things that are producing heat. Now, that's going to really depend on how liberal people are with their definitions. Are robots producing heat? Probably, but maybe not until they're turned on, right? Undead? Probably not. All those Gospog not showing up on this. So it is better for the most part, but it is limited in times when it's really going to count, I think. And being able to detect cyberware and occult tech is nice, but most cyber tech and occult tech is super obvious anyways, so it's not really that big a deal. And I don't think I would allow this to actually detect gene mods. I don't know how you guys feel about that, because gene mods are actually kind of part of your body, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't think I would spend, I would obviously, if I was going to spend 3,000, I would be taking some Occultech Dark Side Eyes for getting rid of 6 points of darkness penalties instead of this, this 4 with a limitation.
Mark, your thoughts on the Bell spectrum?
Maybe I'm screwing something else up, but I don't know how you harden something. I don't know that there's a step where you can spend extra and have hardened shielding on your devices, so that they aren't detected by something like this. So, from a player's perspective, if I've got a hospitaler or Cyber Knight or somebody like that running around with this, and you're from the Cyber Papacy or you're Tharkoldu or something along those lines, you're going to get detected. I mean, so how do you sneak into anywhere that's guarded by these people? And if that's all you need to detect it, wouldn't most cameras be equipped with this? So how do you sneak into any place that's got a security camera on? The disguise just isn't going to work because that kindly old woman with the basket that has a hard plas arm and all that Trigon plating underneath their skin stand out like a sore thumb. She doesn't look like an 80-year-old woman anymore. So I don't know. At any rate, it's as Jay pointed out, I made a mistake with that whole buy this before you get that, or buy that before you get this. And it is 4 points, much better. Get this. Don't get that.
So, this is one of the things where movie logic and Torg Eternity logic and real world logic collide in my mind, because they're giving like 3 different ways that this Bell spectrum detects targets or allows you to see and ignore the 4 points of darkness penalties, being radio, infrared, and UV radiation. I work with UV radiation every other
real
day.
Life.
Yeah,
Here
real
we
life. It's one of those real life. Some things you just can't get out of your mind. And I do not use it in any way, shape, or form on organic matter or heat matter. Just looking at items of evidence under a short and long range UV with a camera with a proper filter, and I'm looking at just objects, whatever the object is, from a soda can to a firearm, and I've never not been able to see the object. So with it being 3,000, I would probably just ignore that, in my house rule
just make
home
it
game.
-4.
I would just have it be the ignore 4 points of darkness penalties without any of that.
Much
it
easier.
needs the heat. Maybe we'll find it, but I know I've heard or read hardened shielding before and other things, maybe spells or stuff, but I currently off the top of my head can't remember an actual item that a Storm Knight can buy or perk that hardens their or gives them shielding. So yeah, that part is kind of like so yeah, that's my thing. I would just house rule this to be 4 points of darkness. You're paying 3 times the ignoring 2 points of darkness. I don't see why it needs that extra penalty. And as Jay said, the occult tech is ignoring the full 6 points. So
yeah, at 4 I would take it.
So let's move on to the Bell track. This implant interfaces with a smart gun and tracks multiple targets, allowing the character to shoot multiple targets or take simultaneous actions with ease. The characters may ignore up to 2 penalties or 2 points of multi-targeting or multi-action penalties, not both. When equipped with a smart gun, multi-action penalties still apply to actions other than shooting a target. So, Jay, your thoughts on Bell track?
Well, before we discuss Bell track, I think we probably have to discuss what the MAS smart gun attachment does. Because there's the smart gun attachment, there's the smart link, and then there's the Bell track. And they're all different things. So the smart gun attachment is normally something you put on a weapon, and it just allows you to use smart ammo, basically.
That's the base.
Yeah, and if you have cybernetics hooked up to it, which this bell track would do, it lets you also see through the gun. So whatever you're pointing at, you can see, so you could do the whole cheeky point around corners kind of thing, right? And aim from some safety. But then in addition, with this, you get to ignore the multi-targeting or multi-action penalties, which for 3,000, in all honesty, I think is pretty good. Because once you get to a certain point, you are almost always doing a multi-action or multi-target, it seems, every round. Like, beginning characters usually tend to do like one thing at a time because they don't want to screw it up. But then once you start getting some high skills, and if you're the gun guy, i.e. someone who would actually put cybernetics related to guns in them, then you've probably got a good number, and you can, take multiple shots. So lowering it is pretty good. It's basically Whirlwind, but for firearms for less. Although the smart gun attachment is $200. It's not, super expensive. So keep that in mind. And it can, in theory, be used with, in theory, Thargold can use it. It's because it's Tech 25. They can use smart guns and smart gun ammo, but they don't have like the cyberware that would necessarily work with it. But Cyber Papacy does. However, you think their universal interfacing cables work, that's up to the GM. But so there's a lot that you could probably get out of this. It's a pretty good one. I like it.
Mark, your thoughts on the bell track?
So before we get too far off of this, I want to address something, because it seems to me like a contradiction, and I want to get y'all's thoughts on how this would play out, because it says in the text, allowing the character to shoot multiple targets or take simultaneous actions with these, the character may ignore up to 2 points of multi-targeting or multi-action penalties, not both, when equipped. Multi-action penalties still apply to actions other than shooting a target. Well, every action that isn't shooting a target is multi-action. So where are my multi-action penalties that I can apply this to if multi-action penalties still apply other than shooting? I can't shoot twice. So I can't, right? So I don't have
the penalty would still apply to the other thing you were doing. Like if you were
so you're saying the multi-action penalty doesn't apply to the shooting side of the equation, but applies to the other action.
Yeah, or if you were multi-actioning to do three things, like you were trying to go through the DSR, shoot someone, and intimidate someone else, this would just ignore 2 of that 4-point penalty for the shooting, right? Or would it? No, it would just let you ignore the 2 points.
So normally, what you just described would be -4.
Yeah.
Multi-action, and if you're only shooting one, let's just assume for the moment that you're only shooting one target, because that just complicates things.
Yeah.
Right. So you're shooting one target. You're doing 3 things. So you're only going to take normally that would be -4, but with this you're only going to take a -2, or is there is the shoot a straight roll?
To me, it sounds like the shoot is free.
Because this says multi-action penalties still apply to actions other than shooting a target. So, but it also says I get to ignore multi-action. So,
I think it's so that people
my shot by 2.
I think for me that was added as a kind of a clarification, because it says multi-action or multi-target. So if I intimidate and shoot, I get negative. I ignored 2 of those 4 points. If I shoot 2 targets, I ignore 2. But if I taunt that guy and do and intimidate another guy, there's nothing. I don't get anything, because neither one of those was included shooting a target.
Do you have to have a shot involved in multi-action?
Yes.
It's because the way it's worded is that you may ignore up to 2 points of multi-targeting or multi-action when equipped with a smart gun. It doesn't actually say you have to be using the gun for anything. So that last bit was just saying, yeah, you still have to. It only applies to shooting. You can't just have it in your hand.
Yeah, like I'm going to cast a spell and
that's
intimidate.
Our clarification. So if I'm intimidating and picking a lock,
yeah,
I still have
having a
-2.
smart gun in your hand doesn't help.
Right.
Right. Okay, but if I'm intimidating, shooting somebody, and picking a lock,
yes.
now I get to reduce that. It was normally -4. Now it's -2.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so you're kind of getting a shot for free as a free action in a check. Okay, so I mean, I like it. It makes sense what this does. A lot of the cyberware enhances the smart gun, the dock, if you will, the base dock. It's almost like here's the gateway drug. The rest of this stuff cobbles onto it and makes it even better. So you get the smart dock, so you can just use it, smart gun attachment. And what's your flavor of using the smart gun? Well, I like this because this is cyberware whirlwind essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's good. So if you would normally take whirlwind,
it's better than whirlwind.
It is better than whirlwind because it works for both.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But if you would normally take whirlwind because you like it and you know how that works for your melee characters, then take this because you'll know how this works, and it does a little bit extra because it gives you a little bit more with the multi-action bit.
But this doesn't path into Cyclone later.
Right.
It does not. But I mean, hey.
No, I think this is pretty cool, and the multi-action. That's when you, as a game master, would need to decide how you would if you would allow this to interact with the bell snipe, as I'm taking the simple action to aim, I shoot that guy, and then as my action, I of that round, because that's a simple action, I'm still going to need to roll, but I'm going to taunt that other guy and get your -2 to it. So that's
There's
where
also,
you can start stacking some neat things together if you would allow that.
And I remember Deanna always used to say that, like, the rules, like the perks and the equipment does what it says it does.
Right.
And that's it, right?
Yep.
Don't infer things. But then, like Mark said earlier, like sometimes you should probably be able to infer other things it could do. So technically, you only get to ignore like the multi-action or the multi-targeting penalty if you're shooting.
Mm-hmm.
But as I mentioned, you could see through the gun, so I might let someone use it to peek around a corner and get a bonus on a find check, or a trick check or something as well, if I felt that it really fit. But again, like Mark said, you don't want the players to get used to letting you get away with a bunch of crazy stuff like that. But sometimes it fits.
Yeah, because it's not necessarily a bonus, it's just removing a penalty. So if you were in a thing of, like, I'm around the corner, and I, as a game master, would say, okay, now you have -2, and you say, hey, can I stick my gun and look through my gun, then the game master could decide whether or not that fits the scene, if they would allow that or not.
So the problem you get into with aim and bell snipe and this is at the end of the aim action it says but may not run or take regular actions, including multi-actions. So
but the bell snipes thing, changing it to a simple action.
But that changes the full round of the aim. It doesn't necessarily remove the restriction of what you can do with an aim.
Yeah, because it says instead of sacrificing a turn, and that's what the sacrificing a turn means.
I mean, Leamon gets to make those decisions. I'm just saying that's what the wording says there, including I'd have to think about that. I mean, you've paid for this the bell track.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's the specific trumping the general. before we started the recording, we were talking about that as like being a general, that's a ubiquitous rule in almost every game, right? The specific trumps the general, and in this case, it specifically says this is something you can do. And I guess if you paid for both of those pieces of cyberware to enhance what your character can do, then I would I talked myself into
And
it.
You still can't
shoot two people.
You still can't multi-target the bell snipe. So
Right,
it would
but you
just be
can multi-action.
Yeah.
Right. You can multi-action and not have a penalty. So hey, taunt, shoot the guy really well and taunt his friend.
See how good I shot him? You're next.
So yeah, I like bell track. So let's move down to the CSI. I kill Mark IV. This one also is updated in the Cyber Papacy sourcebook. The iKill projects a low-intensity laser beam onto a target visible to the user. When linked to a weapon via a smart gun attachment, it eliminates the first 2 points of range penalties for 2,000. So, Jay, what are your thoughts on the iKill?
Not a big fan of this one. For a few reasons. One, it breaks the tradition by having the Mark IV only give a 2. So usually it corresponds with the number. 2, almost every combat my groups have gotten into has been at medium at max range. Very rarely are things at long range, and when they are at really long range, it's because they have engendered to make them long range and are using like sniper rifles or something like that. The other thing is, I was just trying to find it here. So you need the smart gun attachment, which isn't that big a deal as we've discussed, but a regular just $150 laser sight. Actually, I can't remember. I always thought that it let you ignore 1 point of penalties. I've seen that on character sheets, but it doesn't actually say that on here. But either way, like a normal targeting scope, you do have to take an aim action. It removes 2 points of range penalties. The HUD scope from Pan Pacifica lets you ignore 2 points of either range, concealment, or darkness penalties. And it costs less than this. So in my mind, A, extreme range penalties don't come up that often, and B, this is pretty expensive for what it gives, to be honest.
Mark, your thoughts on the iKill Mark IV?
Yeah, we're back to niche. Torg Eternity tends to be an up close and personal kind of combat system. I can't tell you. We'll get to it, and I can tell you the one and only time that comes to mind where range penalties mattered. I take that back too. And we just talked about the Paquette fighters downing the aircraft to open Act 2 in Fires of Ra, and range penalties came into play there just because it's not written into it, but it offends me that the fighter jets would come in and stay at short range, because you got the way that a jet swoops in and moves out and comes back around for an attack run. You can't stay at close range to do that. But the other instance is also in Fires of Ra, and we'll get there. Everything else, I can't tell you the last time I've had players at a range that wasn't close. Medium, almost, when people get into medium range, they're like, oh my, I don't want to be here, and they move to get out of that penalty. The only time that I could see this regularly coming up would be in a chase where you have steps, and the steps could be considered range penalties because it's thematically giving you a distance or a reason that but like in the Indiana Jones, the steps of the chase, your car isn't really losing anybody in that, right? The steps of the chase are I'm gaining advantages over you, but we're still at close range. You still have a -2. So because we're kind of breaking the reality of what the chase is and saying you got a -2, a -3, -4, -6 for those steps, I might allow this to affect those and take one of those steps penalties out, given that's what it's designed to do, is to affect range, because that's really what it is. A step is a range penalty, even though you're not, in some cases, actually increasing range. So I would probably just say, yeah, you can use that. This would apply there, but we're still niche, and I'm with Jay.
Yeah, this is also going to depend on how you play. If you play Theater of the Mind, like my in-person group, we don't use battle maps at all, and for the most part, things are at that close range. When I game mastered on a VTT, my players really wanted those ranges, and then we stuck with those ranges. So these penalties would come up, and I want to say when we went through when Cosms collide under Mike, he like, I usually do the squares on a battle map being like 2 meters. He had the 1 meter, so I remember that we had one fight that was like, I think there was 20 or so enemies scattered all over, and range kind of came into that. But that is, again, so niche that if you do that way, then this could be a much better piece of cyberware than if you don't use it.
Ironically, I kind of find doing Theater of the Mind, range will come in more, because if you have a battle map, you usually want it to fit on the screen, and it's relatively, like, it's got,
I agree,
like, certain dimensions, and you're not going to go crazy. Whereas Theater of the Mind, you can be like, oh yeah, those ogres are 240 feet away, and it's no biggie.
Is that long range? You don't even have to say feet. Are they medium range? Are they short range? Are they long range? You can just bracket them into zones.
That's the trend these days, right?
Yeah.
Like games like Shadow Dark and stuff just have near, far, and distant. They don't even have numbers.
Yeah, but again, I play with like many people, so the maps tend to be extremely large.
Yeah.
Yes, you are insane. We have agreed on that.
Yes.
It is known.
But no, again, I think we all come down to it. Your miles will vary depending on how you play your game with range modifiers. It could be useful, it could be not. For 2,000, it does seem to be a little on the expensive side for what it does. But we can move on to the Rove Eye, CSI Rove Eye. This implant can be unnerving. It randomly scans person's surroundings independent of their other eye, so you have a crazy eye going on. The device's processor automatically compares objects and people, detected known dangers, including weapons, assassins, ambushes. The user cannot be surprised, but is treated as an outsider when making persuasion tests, a -4 penalty. The processing automatically compensates for the motion, and the user does not feel any disorientation while the device is active. The Rove Eye can be removed and placed on a surface. These can rotate around and transmit images up to 100 meters away, and it's 5,000. So, Jay, what are your thoughts on the CSI Rove Eye?
5,000 is a lot for this.
Yes.
As Mark mentioned there, I always just call it the Mad Eye Moody, because that's like the perfect visualization of it, just this woo looking around. If you have a player, or you are a player who takes this, like, a significant amount of time is going to be spent in arguing how they should be able to cover it up and not suffer this outsider penalty. Oh, well, if I have goggles on, they can't see me. Oh, if I have an image inducer up, they can't see it. Oh, if I have a disguise spell, they can't see it. Oh, if I just take it out of the eye and have it on a stick, that's not a negative, right? People will do anything to get out of a -4 penalty, but they want to keep that immune to surprise. So I've always said, if you want to be immune to surprise, it's got to be in there, doing its thing the way it was meant to do. That's what the Cyber Pope wants. That's what he gets. That said, realistically, there's no reason this thing needed to be scurrying around, looking all over the place. It could have just been like a crystal orb that could just see in every direction already. I don't know why it had to be. I mean, that's just the balancing, I guess, because not being surprised is really powerful. There are a few other perks, I believe, outside of the Cyber Papacy that allow it, but not very much, and it's always a very powerful ability. So if they want that power, they need to take the negative, and you could just lean on how people know what it is, right? In the Cyber Papacy, so they're gonna think you're paranoid, just like in Harry Potter. And so it can also just be a good source of role playing as well, as people make fun of them for it, or just all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't think I would ever take it myself, but some players are just as paranoid as the characters who would take such a thing. So more power to you.
Mark, your thoughts on the CSI Rove Eye?
Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean the toaster isn't listening. Okay. Yeah, I am 100% with Jay. If you want the benefit, you must incur the penalty. Period. Let's not have the argument. That's the statement. So if you want to be immune to surprise, you must be -4 to persuasions. It's just the way it works. The thing that it's the whole take it out and leave it on the table somewhere. And how now we have this whole discussion
Yeah,
about
just put an eye patch on,
hiding it and putting it somewhere else, and this, that, and the other. And Jakar from Babylon 5, later seasons, when he has his false eye doing that kind of thing, comes to mind for those of you who are deep into the nerd watching. I have never taken this one. It's too expensive. I don't get enough from it. I have not been surprised often enough in combat that I care enough about it to spend 5,000 of my budget, which is half or more, to not be surprised. It happens. It sucks when it happens. It's one round and you move on. So yeah, I won't be taking this.
I think it's fun. I do agree that it's probably not worth the 5,000. I do like that because I have players that would love to just be able to use it as a spy thing. I would probably do maybe a little more compromise on the persuasion. I would say that whoever you are persuading, you had to have had taken it out or not be using it during the entire time you're talking with that person. Because if it's all moving around and then you pop it out to do a persuasion and that person has seen it, then all they're going to be thinking about is, oh my God, that guy had a crazy eye that he just took out.
He took his eye out. He took his eye out.
So, and that would go on that if, say, that they had it out, they had it in their pocket, they talked to the guy, and I am being generous, and I'm like, okay, you're at this point, you're not going to be immune to surprise, but you don't get the -4 penalty. If you're like getting like somebody runs in and says, oh no, we're going to be ambushed, and you throw that thing in your eye socket, then from that moment on, anybody there is, you're never going to get rid of that penalty to whoever has seen it. So that's what my kind of condition would be. If they know that you've had that, you're going to have that penalty. So it'll be a little more strict than just you don't have it when it's covered up or not showing or it's out. But once they learn, you're always going to have that penalty just because they're going to be thinking about it in the back of their mind. And again, to me, I love the flavor of it. I really love the flavor of it. It's kind of like what Mark, you were talking about, like the bell scan, but actually telling more of what it could be used. You know, here's this thing it can do. Here's this mechanic. You can't be surprised. -4 persuasion. But then there's kind of this more of it that it can rotate around. You can leave it. It can transmit up to 100 meters. It kind of adds a little more to it. I think like the bell scan and some of these other ones would have been better if they would have had something like this. And even though I like the addition, I'm not necessarily convinced of the cost. So let's move on to one more for this episode. And so this will be Sensory Implants Part 1. Let's do...
You got 2 more.
Yeah, you don't want to just finish.
Oh, I guess so.
Ones.
Visual.
Yeah.
I'm looking off 2 lists, so it's on the 1, but not. So okay, let's do the 2 then. We did the Rovi, the Cyberham Retina Mimic. Okay, we might have to do 3.
Okay.
So this device can record the retina pattern of an individual by looking eye to eye within 1 meter distance. Lockpicking tests to fool a retina scanner with a recorded pattern are automatically passed with an outstanding success. Without a specific retina pattern, the test is favored instead, and it is 2,000. So Jay, your thoughts on the Cyberham Retina Mimic?
This is the kind of equipment that's kind of like making a nodder, where you will either not be allowed to do it because it's part of some, like, you know, just unalterable thing. It's part of the story, or it's part of really baked into an adventure or whatever. Or you're going to just trivialize everything because you're so good at it. So this does require, well, it doesn't require. It's amazing if you are able to meet the person whose retina needs to be scanned. Mm-hmm. You just look them in the eye, and then you can open up anything that they had access to. This does imply that there's a lot of retina scan locks, which isn't really mentioned anywhere else. So that's a good tidbit to know for GMs when you're doing your cyber papacy adventures, that there's a lot of retina locks. So you... if you've scanned someone, which you do just by looking them in the eye, then you can bypass that retina lock automatically with an outstanding success. Boom. Best you could hope for. So don't even roll. GM's just like, yeah, you did it. Right? If you don't have their particular retina scan banked, you still get favored on your lock picking, which is good, right? So this is worth, how much was it again? 2,000?
Mm-hmm.
If you are making an infiltrator, thief / spy type character, this is money well spent. Obviously, if you're not, then you wouldn't bother in the first place, probably. There is a tendency of, like, if my character is a lock-picking character, and I've maxed out lock-picking, I've taken mastery and lock-picking, would I really want this just to get favored? Maybe. Because it's kind of a weird situation when you get an ability or a spell or something that totally bypasses you needing to use one of your skills that you have invested a lot in as well. So ironically, this might even be a better item for someone who doesn't even really have much in the way of lockpicking. The master locksmith would probably poo-poo this whole thing and want to do it themselves. But either way, I think it's definitely a good one for an infiltrator.
So, Mark, your thoughts on the Cyberham Retina Mimic?
I think it's only giving you favored on retina locks, not all locks.
Yeah. No,
so,
lock-picking on retina lock.
Yeah,
right.
So, I mean, your lock-picking still applies to everything else. It's just going to, if you got an... And now, retina locks, Pan-Pacific and Cyber Papacy, and probably Tharkold to a degree.
And Court.
Could, yeah, I mean, biometrics are a thing for us, so... I mean, there's four places where you can run into these. So it's a little niche, but it's not as niche as some of the other stuff. And as Jay said, if you're going to build a lockpicking character, this is not a bad thing to pick up. Beyond that, I mean, it's 2,000. It's probably priced right. I just don't see it as it's not going to be as useful as something that comes up in every combat, or that comes up, like your hard blast arm with the strength or the armor, that kind of thing. So, if you're a lockpicker, this is probably something you've got in your list somewhere, especially if you're planning on spending some time in some of the higher tech cosms.
Okay, so I'll actually save the other one for the next time when we do, because I wanted to combine this with one of the other ones, but my issue with this is it just being retina, because again, this is when real world knowledge can make you go, because again, if I'm writing something about a subject that I'm not an expert with, an expert in, then an expert in that will be like, oh my god, he just forgot half of the field type thing. Retina scanners are very popular in movies and TV shows, which is kind of what Torg Eternity is based on. So I get that cinematic logic. But real world biometric data also deals with iris scanners, not retina scanners. Our AFIS system, our automatic fingerprint identification system, also has places to put biometrics for iris scanners, not for retina scanners, because it's easier to see because it's on the surface of your eye, not inside your eye.
Hey, we're not Tech 26 though.
Yeah,
easy now. Yeah,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
But so I would just say this: I would, instead of having this be a retina mimic, that it could mimic both retina and iris, because you could have that GM going, okay, I'm gonna put I'm gonna get rid of your retina mimic power by saying that it is an iris detector.
This gets back to the whole specifics issue, because I imagine you were going to talk about the Cyberham fingerprint mimic, but I could see easily these all being replaced with just a biometric mimic.
Yes, that was going to be my point. So, okay, then let's jump into that, because I have two things I wanted to talk about with the fingerprint mimic. So, the Cyberhand fingerprint mimic, it fools fingerprint scans 1,000 per finger.
What?
What?
Where the heck are we?
We're going down to tactile implants.
Tactile.
It says this one is detailed in the gear chapter of Torg Eternity.
Oh, here we go. Okay,
it just says
books.
Fool's fingerprint scans per finger. That's all it says.
Yes. So, what would your thoughts be for a fingerprint mimic, the Cyberhand ham fingerprint mimic? If we can,
we're both paging really quick.
We're trying to find it here. For $1,000, that is very niche. But that's what I'm saying. I would probably personally redo this as just biometrics. I don't know if I wouldn't want to take eyes and fingers and breath and blood, all as separate things. Why can I not find the cyberware section in this book?
I found it. I just can't find this one.
Cyberham. Yeah, it doesn't have
it doesn't have
a description. It's just in the table.
Right.
So yeah, I guess it just works 100% of the time for realsies. Just auto. What does Fool's fingerprint scan really mean? Right? Whose access are you getting? Is it just blocking? Is it just changing your fingerprint so you're not leaving your own? But no, it's for scans. So where is it getting the data from? What's it doing? Who knows?
It just fools them.
Yeah. So, I guess I would treat it the same. You get an outstanding success to lockpick it, essentially. There you go.
So, any thoughts from you, Mark?
I mean, I guess there's no real explanation for it because I guess they think it reads fool's fingerprint scans. How much more information do you need? It fools fingerprint scans. Okay. If we were to extrapolate how the iris scanner or retina scanner works, you would have to have a sample of the fingerprints from the person that you wanted to fool. And I mean, I'm going to build into that this piece of cyberware, you have to load that fingerprint into your database. Now, if we go on the idea that from sanctioned cyberware, the cyber papacy has the biometrics for all citizens who are good members of the cyber papacy, then you have access to every fingerprint that's in their database. And so what's the point? You just touch it and you get to be who you want to be. Because I mean, but the problem you have now is, okay, typically we're going to try and fool the system into thinking that we're a higher tiered member of the cyber papacy. So do you have to have clearance to access, the Inquisition's fingerprints to get into the vault where they've stored the incriminating evidence, or have that copy of the Julian's Bible? I don't know. How do you want to? There's not anything here, so you know what? You get to do it how you want to in your own Cosmverse. When your player asks you, "Can I?" Well, maybe you say yes. I don't know.
Ah, there it is.
Where?
So I was looking at this entire time. No, but I knew there was another one. Okay, so Cyberham Fingerprint Mimic 1000.
Where are you?
Cyberham Retina Mimic 2000. Cyberham Synthy Voice 1000. So if I want the full get past locks package, I need to spend $4,000 on cybernetics.
Where are
that? Well, that's on page 36, the Cyberham Synthy Voice. Because I knew there was one that let you copy a voice as well, but it's under physical enhancements, not sensory implants.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to copy fingerprints, voices, and retinas, that's $4,000. The question is that too much for your overall infiltrator package? I don't know.
You need something that does the face too, because you don't look like Bob. You sound like Bob.
Yeah,
your eye looks
there's
like
a
Bob.
piece of gear for that.
Bob. Okay.
You get that image inducer that everyone gives the Idinos, right?
So I'm going to go back on the fingerprint mimic because that's what I do for a living. Per finger.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
It means that your other 9 fingers are not going to be useful when you're trying to get past a... Well,
yeah, I'm not even paying any attention to that. I'm hand waving the shit out of that. I'm not.
Or palms.
It's not there. It's not there.
Your palm.
No.
So, no, I completely agree with Jay. I think a biometric thing that just sums everything up would be great, because I could see wanting to make a spy infiltrator, or even somebody who's trying to get the heat off them and on to somebody else, that they would want to be able to change. If you touch something with your hand, you got a whole palm print. And if one of your, messing with this one, your index finger on your left hand is not going to do anything for all the other biometric evidence that you're leaving. And if you could get access to a database and mimic somebody's entire, palm prints and fingerprints, which are in most modern databases, let alone Pan Pacifica and Cyber Papacy, that this would be so much better of a cyberware system. And even if it is, taking whatever the highest of them, or maybe making it a nice package, say for 3,000 or something, that you get anything that deal with eyes, anything that deals with friction-rich skin, and anything that does with voices. That's what my preference would be, because as soon as they start trying to be specific, I'm going to go crazy, so I need to go general. So then I don't have to get into those, but you're missing this aspect and you're missing this aspect. If you just tell me hey, here's a general thing that works with everything, I'm perfectly fine with that. If you want to get specific, that's, as an example, my brother is a firearms examiner. He's perfectly okay with being general of ammo does this. But when people start using clips instead of the word magazine, or bullets instead of cartridges, he starts, twitching and, type stuff. But if you just use a general term like ammo, ammunition, something like that, then he can step back and go, okay, this is not trying to be, people are not using wrong terms. They just are being very umbrella, and I can fit everything under this nice umbrella. So that's kind of my little mini rant on the Cyberware recently when I was re-going through everything. I was looking at this going, yeah, you're either going to pay $100 and your game master is going to be nice and let you go through everything, or I'm going to spend my entire $10,000 to get all my fingers, and then my game master is going to pull out a palm, needs a whole freaking palm, and then my whole budget is gone. So, Jay, you brought it up, but the just the biometric mimic is my answer to this.
Are you saying that might be a preview for year 2?
I'm saying you, the viewer or listener, can decide based off of my little mini rant.
Read what you want into that.
So let's go ahead and do that last one on the sensory implants, the TSE HUD. This heads-up display allows the user to read documents or view video sent to them electronically. The images are displayed directly onto the user's retina. Some applications of this implant include discrete document reading, viewing of security feeds, monitoring data from various sources including the TSE recorder or data chips. 500. So, Jay, what are your thoughts on the TSE HUD?
Well, earlier Mark said something where you thought that being able to see in the dark should be like the basic effect of any cyber eyes, where personally I think that this should be the basic effect of any cyber eyes. Like, you should get the HUD as soon as you get any cyber optics whatsoever. The fact that it's only 500 is good, but it is kind of a flavor thing mostly, although it has actually come up handy in my game where the cyber papacy character was able to read documents and things in front of people without them knowing. So it has come up, but like I said, I would almost want this just if you have cyber optics, you get this. That's it. Kind of like how I know gene mods have something like the animal allure. It's free. Like you could just get it if you get any gene mods, So it's something like that. But yeah, I like it. I've always liked these kinds of HUDs in basically any kind of cyberpunk type game or fiction. So very flavorful.
Mark, your thoughts on the TSE HUD?
I like a heads-up display. I like the idea of it. I like Jay's idea of it in that, this if you've got a cybernetic eye, this is part of the operating system for the cybernetic eye. It can't do all the other neat stuff it does without the base operating system. Here's Windows 11 done on your eye. So I like
screen
that.
of death.
Blue eye of death. I like it doesn't sound like much, but as Jay said, it becomes super useful almost every game when you are in a situation where a hacker sets up a video feed on the security systems and then has that through their deck projected on their eye, so they're watching the security screens on their eye as they're going through whatever. I mean, nobody knows that that's going on, but they're monitoring, and that's a super cool, super cyber papacy kind of thing, or Pan Pacifica kind of thing to do. And when you say this is what I'm doing, all of a sudden you have this feel that changes the feel of the game. It's much more Torg Eternity to me when I'm running around with monitoring the feeds through my cyber deck, through the Wi-Fi onto my cyber eye as we're continuing to do what we're doing. That's just super cool to me. And I like hand waving, that kind of thing. And yes, you can absolutely do that. Because it just, like I said, I like that flavor. And that's, if you don't take this, if you don't spend the $500 on it, you can't do it. And it's worth doing because it's very flexible, and you can do a lot with it if you're creative.
So yeah, actually, Jay, I like that idea of it kind of just being it's the base operating system. You got your this is hacked cyberware. So I'm sure that the cyber papacy official sanctioned cyberware, when they install this, they're probably going to have little reminders to go to Sunday school and stuff, right. Mass and all of that stuff, whereas the one that you get through the perk is going to be clean, so you kind of have that clean operating system with just your HUD up on it, and then all these other things that you can add to the eye stuff are going to be like apps or programs added to it. But yeah, 500 is cheap, and I definitely can see, as you said, you had players just reading the document right there, and nobody realizes that they're reading it. So you use some of the stuff we'll go into at a different time. You'll be able to take a picture of it, or you'll be able to record something, and then you can replay that and do it when you need to have it, and that's kind of cool. So for 500, it's cool, but for 0 or wrapped up with something else, it could be better.
Yeah.
So that is all of the sensory implants.
The visual ones.
Or yeah, the visual. Sorry, visual sensory implants. Next time we'll get into other ones that we do this. We'll bounce back between this and the Mega Adventures just to kind of mix things up so it won't be the exact same thing every single episode. But having said that, we do encourage you to write us at torgdcd@gmail.com. Send us your questions, your comments, etc., and we'll answer to our best of our ability, or comment on your comments, etc. So until next time, we hope you have fun in your own Cosmverse. Bye.